Well, good evening and welcome to our special July 4th edition of Tucker Carlson Tonight. We hope all of our viewers are enjoying the holiday today, one of the greatest ever. We're halfway through 2017, and in that span we've had to spend a lot of time talking about Russian hacking, even though, as you may have noticed, no evidence at all has emerged that Russian agents were indeed responsible for altering the results of last fall's election. To give you an idea of how little has happened, consider this interview we conducted with Congressman Adam Schiff of Burbank, California, back in December. We could have had the same interview tonight, and not much would have changed.
These hacks were of such seriousness, they could not have taken place without the approval at the highest levels of the Kremlin.
That's speculation, and we've seen a lot. Well, it is speculation. That's
it is not speculation. You can only say speculation.
It's a statement of fact?
It is a statement of the intelligence community's best assessment,
okay.
and you can quarrel with that because there's a political reason to do it, but this is what the intelligence professionals are saying.
Well, they've told us a lot. You know, I've lived here a long time. I remember vividly the massive stockpiles of WMD in Iraq, which the intelligence community assured us were there, and they weren't. So, pardon me for my skepticism. I think it's a patriotic position. But let me just say this: we know.
Tucker, let me just say this: you don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take.
I've been following, but here's what I don't get. There's been a lot of hacking.
The Republican members of the intelligence committee.
But here we've had hacking
think this is in dispute.
Of the Pentagon, the White House, the State Department. The CIA director's personal email was hacked. We think in some cases by Russia. I don't remember you holding a press conference and saying, hey, Obama administration, your cybersecurity is pathetic. How specifically did the Russians make this election outcome different from what it would have been otherwise? How specifically did they, quote, hack our democracy?
We will never know, whether this was determinative any more than Director Comey's involvement in the election. The means they used were hacking into democratic institutions and the leaking of documents designed in the primary process to sow division between the Clinton and Sanders camps, something we saw actually took place as a result of that. And then in the general election to attempt to discredit Secretary of State Clinton in a way that would harm her and would help Donald Trump.
How did they do that?
Well, it was pretty obvious, wasn't it? They hacked, they released documents that were
real.
Oh, yes, they were real, and they were ones that were damaging to Secretary Clinton. Can you point to documents that they disclosed that were damaging to the Republican Party?
Let's just get to the bottom line. You're upset because you think this affected the election. I get why you're upset. But are you arguing that voters, and other reasons too, but are you arguing that voters should not have seen that information?
This is an important point, though. It's not just the fact that it damaged the candidate I was supporting. All Americans, Democrats and Republicans, and particularly, of the party of Reagan, ought to be concerned when we have Russia interfering in our political affairs.
But are you arguing that voters should not have had the right to see that information? If you could take it back, would you say voters, you're not allowed to see that information?
Well, I would say that we ought to stop Russia from doing this. Now, whether the press should publish the information or not,
do you think they should?
That is a different question. I think that there are some cases where the public interest is so great they should publish. But I also think, and this was an issue I took with the press during the campaign, that when they do publish information that the Russians have hacked and the Russians want us to see, they ought to inform the public of the provenance of those emails.
But they don't know it, and neither do you. You don't know that. You don't know that the government. I think it's really irresponsible for you to say you know that the Putin government did that.
What is irresponsible, Tucker, for you to make that claim without looking at the evidence, and more importantly,
you can't say that you know the Putin government did that.
More importantly, for the president-elect today. To say that he doesn't know whether the Russians.
Look, you're on the Intel Committee. Let me just ask you one final question. Can you look right into the camera and say, I know for a fact the government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email?
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of our institution and the dumping of information.
Of John Podesta's email.
Not only in the United States, but also in Europe.
Okay, you're not. You know what? You're dodging.
And Tucker,
no, look and say, I know they did. John Podesta's emails. They hacked those.
And I think that Ronald Reagan will be rolling over his grave.
Ronald Reagan.
You're carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the. You're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee, and you can't say they hacked.
You're gonna have to move your show to RT Russian television because
you know what?
This
That's
is perfect.
Just so beneath your office because it's so dumb and you're being duplicitous. I'm asking you, did they hack Podesta's emails? And you can't say it.
Personal insults like that, Tucker.
You just said I was carrying. Oh, you said I was carrying water for Putin. That's pretty hilarious.
When you essentially are an apologist for the Kremlin, that's what you're doing.
I'm going to apologize one last time, Congressman. look into the camera and say they hacked John Podesta's emails. We know for a fact that Putin's government did that. You can't, and you know you can't, and you're hiding behind weasel words.
I just said that
say they hacked John Podesta's emails.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as to
because you don't know it. That's why. All right. Done. One. You don't know it, and you're alleging it without any evidence. And
you're ignoring the evidence because you don't care. The fact that it helped the Republican candidate is all you need to know, apparently.
That's totally false. I just think if you're going to make a serious allegation about an actual country with an actual government, you ought to know what you're talking about, and you don't.
I think that you ought to accept.
I got to go. I'm taking cash from Putin now. I'm on RT.
Republicans on the Intelligence Committee have seen for a fact.
If you could say it, you would, and you can't, and you know that.
If you're willing to be in denial about this because it suits a Republican-elect president,
okay, whatever. You can blather on all you want, man, but I gave you a chance to state it clearly, and you wouldn't, which tells you everything you know.
You,
all right,
or our president-elect? Okay. Not very much, apparently.
I appreciate that, Congressman. And now I need to take a call from Vladimir Putin, so I'm going to put you on hold for 1 second. Well, Congressman Schiff wasn't the only one who couldn't provide a scintilla of evidence of Russian collusion. We brought a parade of Democrats onto the show over the months we've been on the air. And while all of them are happy to promote conspiracy theories, some of them real tinfoil hat stuff, none of them has provided any evidence to back them up.
We are focusing to make sure that our republic is secure because of the extraordinary intervention by a hostile foreign power.
You're selling crap to your voters, and you know that. You're telling them that all their problems can be explained by Vladimir Putin's intervention into American politics.
That's 100% not
and it's
true.
Insane, and it's sad, and they believe you because they trust you, but you're lying to them.
We are literally going out there and campaigning every day on health care. That's what our candidates are going out there and talking to people about. That's what members of Congress are spending their time focusing on. I mean, if you turn on the TV
really, because I live here, I host a cable show in this city, and I can promise you that every person I talk to on the left is totally absorbed in the Russia story, and this poll, on which this whole segment is predicated, proves that it's true. Look, you heard the FBI director today say that Vladimir Putin hated Hillary Clinton, hated her. He personally hated her, and that's why he sought her defeat in the election.
How do you think he made that up?
How would he?
Or do you think
I don't know the answer. I'm asking you as a member of the Intel Committee. Yeah. How would he know something like that? I don't know what I think about things. We don't even know ourselves. How could he possibly know the innermost thoughts of
Why are we really here? I mean,
it's a serious question. Yeah. Why would he allege something like that? How could he possibly know that?
Because of intelligence reporting.
Based on what?
Through electronic sources that are in the public report that the intelligence community put out. That he,
but there's no indication of how we could know Vladimir Putin's innermost thoughts about Hillary Clinton. And you're asking me to
do you
just take
think we should tell the world how we collect intelligence?
No, I think before
or should we trust the people who do it?
I think before government officials change our foreign policy and declare war against a sovereign country, as you are attempting to do, we, citizens, have a right to know on what basis you're doing that. This conspiracy is a lot deeper than I thought it was. So you're saying, I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, members of the Trump administration met with Russian officials. That kind of thing happens a lot. Maybe it's ominous, maybe it's not.
Well, and to lie about it. And that's an important thing.
That's fine. No, you're saying now that the military action we just saw on Thursday night may have been coordinated with the Russians to throw sleuths like you off the scent. That appears to be what you're saying. And that just seems like a huge conspiracy to me.
Well, it's a conspiracy if it's a conspiracy, but the reality is I'm just giving it to you as a plausible explanation. No, and that's why I said I'm not going to confirm it. Look, I know you would love for me to say that and confirm it. I'm just saying that there are people who think that.
The truth is Jeff Sessions had nothing to do with Russia hacking into various computer systems, and there's no evidence to suggest otherwise. So why continue the charade?
Tucker, what we know is that the Russians were laser focused on lifting the sanctions against their regime as a result of the invasion of Crimea and Ukraine. They were successful in having the Republican Party platform changed. We don't know how or why. We should.
That's ridiculous.
Let me finish.
That's absurd.
Excuse me.
You're saying things are just dumb. We don't know that.
I mean, they did change the platform, and we don't know why.
The platform committee. I was there. I didn't see any. Was Kislyak there? I didn't see any Russians in the platform committee.
We know the platform committee was changed, and that was an objective.
Because of the Russians. Were they in the meeting?
I didn't say that. If I did, I said we should find out why it was changed. But here's the point.
No, you just said the Russians got it changed in the Republican platform.
Well, then I misspoke.
You don't know that.
No, I wouldn't make that allegation. But we ought to get to the bottom of it. No, listen to me. Listen, Tucker.
So anyone who's against I'm against sanctions on Russia. Why? Does that make me a tool of Putin?
Because you don't care about the invasion of Ukraine or Crimea?
No, I don't think those are central to American interests. Actually, no. I have a legitimate policy disagreement. Am I a spy too? I'm getting very frustrated. I don't know what it means to hack an election. I don't to know exactly what they did that would constitute a crime so severe that you'd have to spy on the Trump campaign to prove it. What is that evidence?
They hacked into the DNC's emails, and they leaked those emails out in a strategic way to impact the election.
Why
and
won't
all of our
How
intelligence agencies?
do you know that?
Because every single one of our intelligence agencies have said that. Director Comey has said that. Clapper
they said
has said that.
They said
have
that.
all
No,
said
actually,
that.
then
and if you don't
maybe
trust them,
maybe you can
then that's a different story.
you can answer this question. I asked the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff of Burbank, California, can you look me straight in the face and say that you have evidence that the Russian government hacked John Podesta or the DNC email accounts? And he declined to do that. So I just want to know, unless you and I have to go on faith, we have to trust politicians in a political system on faith. Why don't we get some evidence that any of this actually happened? Why don't we all have to sort of nod and say, oh, yeah, it must have happened because, like, the Washington Post says it happened? Where's the evidence? President Trump. Well, the foes of the president call themselves the resistance, as though he were a foreign tyrant, Vichy or something, and not the democratically elected leader of our country. It seems silly, but it's also used to justify plenty of pretty outrageous statements and actions. When the Trump administration, for example, released a proposed federal budget, a man called Bishop Dwayne Royster claimed the budget was a form of ethnic cleansing.
This budget, if I can be honest with you, it is an attempt to implement ethnic cleansing in this nation from people of color, but also poor white folk from whom the services being cut will be impacted the most. President Trump and his surrogates have used dog whistle language to speak about race in negative ways and create fear in the hearts of Americans.
Well, that didn't make a lot of sense, so we invited Royster on the show to explain what exactly he meant. Here's part of what he said. You know, I don't want to be in the position of defending a budget that I don't like in a lot of ways. But it's outrageous for you to say he has contempt when you don't know that. You don't know that. It's unknowable. We can evaluate whether the policies work or not, whether we agree with them or not. We can't evaluate what he thinks because we don't know. And you cast this in racial terms.
It is racial.
How is it racial?
It's absolutely racial.
Doesn't this affect poor white people, too?
Absolutely. But
how's it racial?
Tucker, if we were to go back and take a look at Donald Trump as candidate up through all the actions Donald Trump has made in the beginning of his presidency, the actions that he has taken are very much racially motivated. They're very much motivated by faith. They're very much motivated by trying to make America white again, not just make America great again.
How the hell do you look at this budget and say it's ethnic cleansing?
It is ethnic cleansing.
Believe you.
It is. We're talking about taking $1.4 trillion out of Medicaid, making it so that people who struggle the deepest in this country are not going to be able to get the health care that they need. We're talking about taking $200 billion. Let me finish. They're talking about taking $200 billion away from SNAP benefits that are going to be able to help feed people in this country. We're talking about taking away more money.
Hold on, slow down. I'm asking something very specific. Why is it ethnic? Because the life expectancy for black Americans is not in decline. It is in decline for working class white Americans. So presumably it hurts them worse.
But that number is still higher for white folk than it is for black folk in this country. No. The reality is that this is racial. The dog whistle language that Donald Trump and his surrogates used while they were on the campaign trail is the same language that they're using to try to get this budget passed. It's the same language that they're trying to use to be able to try to cut these programs. They're using dog whistle language that goes back to Nixon and when he was using the Southern strategy, when Ronald Reagan was using that language. This is a fact-based conversation. When we look at the programs that are being cut, they are going to cut people of color. They're going to cut poor white people, and the poor white folk out there are being sold a bill of lies.
Instead of making gross generalizations about people's ethnicity and skin color and evoking the shared memories of persecution, which you are doing on purpose, say, look, here's the policy.
People. This is persecuting people.
Maybe he just disagrees with you. Does that make him evil?
In this country will be persecuted as a result of this. We're cutting the legal services corporation so people won't even be able to have a legal defense for themselves in this country.
You're so overstating it that here's the problem. Here's why I think you're a bad representative for your faith. Because you don't
know anything about my faith.
I'm saying this. That a prerequisite of decency is to assume, until proved otherwise, goodwill on the part of people who disagree. That people who are reasonable and decent can have a different view from the view I have, and they're still reasonable and decent. We just disagree. You don't seem to entertain that possibility.
Actually, Tucker, I did not attack Donald Trump personally. I attacked this policy.
Ethnic cleansing?
And I said this particular policy is about ethnic cleansing, along with the Muslim ban, along with what he did at Standing Rock with executive orders, letting oil pipelines come through indigenous communities that the white communities in the same area didn't want coming through their areas. While we look at this budget and everything else that's going on with that.
There are plenty of Indian reservations that have pipelines through them. Are they complicit in ethnic cleansing? And you ought to bring people together in your capacity as a clergyman, not divide them. Don't lift the Bible in my presence, buddy.
I'm a preacher. This is what I do.
No,
right?
not here.
This is what I do. Matthew 25. Jesus talks very clearly about.
You know what? I want to have a conversation about adult
judging
things.
How people are going to be judged. Are you saying faith is not an adult thing? Are you sitting here criticizing faith and saying it's not an adult thing?
Needless to say,
you, sir, ought to be ashamed.
All right, we got to go. You may think Bishop Royster's statements were a little over the top, but by comparison to what we heard from Democratic strategist Jim Devine, they were tame. After the attempted assassination of Congressman Steve Scalise, Devine went on Twitter and said that Republican lawmakers deserved it for engaging in inflammatory rhetoric. He then added this hashtag, Hunt Republican Congressman. We invited Devine on the show, and amazingly, he came. Here's what happened next. Hours after 5 people were shot, including the House Majority Whip, you sent out a tweet that said, Hunt Republicans. I mean, it was clearly a reference to the assassination attempt against Congressman Scalise. It's hard to imagine how you could justify writing something like that.
In the immediate aftermath of the shooting at the Sandy Hook school, we've heard people say this is not the time to talk about gun violence. We've heard lots of things follow this. You know, this is a.
No, but that's not what you were saying. You were encouraging gun violence. Wait, hold on.
Absolutely not.
You were encouraging gun violence.
Absolutely not. I never encouraged gun violence, and I stated on my
tweet. What did you mean by that?
I don't
put down that
condone
paper. I'm talking about you, not some other paper. I mean, please.
But this is what's been out there.
This has been going on. I'm not interested in what other people.
We see stuff like this, and this is not an uncommon
That's great,
thing.
but we're not.
We saw.
So your excuse apparently is other people have done it. That's not an excuse.
It's not an
I'm here to
excuse.
ask you about something that you wrote, and why don't you explain it? Why did you write Hunt Republicans?
Is that for too long, Republicans in this country have failed to distinguish the differences between politics and war. And a lot of Democrats have failed to see the similarities. So you guys either have to tone down the rhetoric or we have to step up. And I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's Hunt Republicans.
There's nothing wrong with that?
Sarah Palin put the crosshairs on Congress. I'm just saying Hunt Republicans instead of Democrats.
First of all, Sarah Palin didn't do that. A group affiliated with her did. And it's a difference between a metaphor and actually suggesting affirmatively go hunt Republicans after Republicans have just been shot.
She put up a boast about her Republican bullseyes.
What point are you making? That that's okay?
What I'm making the point is that after year after year after year of hearing the same kind of violent rhetoric from the right, the left has every reason to come forward and stand up. What I've learned in life is that when you're confronted with bullies, you have to fight fire with fire. You have to stand up to them. But my point is that when you put up obstacles to people voting, when you secretly plot in the Senate to repeal health care that's keeping 50,000 Americans alive, and you're otherwise erecting barriers to the democratic process where we have elections where the people that get the most votes don't win,
that you should be shot?
What happens is, no, but that is tyrannical government.
Do you think that someone who tweets a line such as Hunt Republicans or Hunt Democrats ought to be allowed to have a gun as a gun control advocate? That's my question to you. It's really simple. What's the answer?
Absolutely. I don't think that would in and of itself define them as a person who either broke
someone
the law
going on to social media and advocating violence in the wake of a shooting. That's not a red flag or anything. Okay.
It does not
You're not much of a gun control guy, I guess. Yeah, apparently not. What is your point?
My point is enough is enough.
So,
if it's
time to take up arms?
No, it is not about taking up arms. It is about coming together and fighting back.
Fighting back how?
Politically. Peacefully.
Then what is this about hunting and cheer? You know what? You're an unbalanced person, and I have to say, it's distressing that more Democrats haven't disavowed you. Well, from the academia file this spring, an article in the medical journal Pediatrics said it was, we're quoting now, ethically problematic to refer to breastfeeding as a, quote, natural activity, though, of course, it's the most natural of all activities. It was one of the weirdest things we've seen in a year that has been definitely weird. CATHY AREU of Catalina magazine thought the article was splendid, though, and she came on the show to defend it. So this was kind of a baffling story. One, that people are inserting politics into breastfeeding, which seems like it would be off limits for politics. But, but two, why it would be controversial to call breastfeeding natural. If breastfeeding is not natural, what is natural?
Well, breastfeeding doesn't come naturally, as pediatricians will tell you. It's not exactly easy. There are lactation specialists out there. There's a whole industry out there. So breastfeeding isn't exactly natural. It doesn't come naturally to women. So what they're saying is, which I'm so happy there's a study out there that are finally letting women not have this guilt trip, that it's okay to hand the formula over to daddy, to the men, and it's natural for a man to feed a baby. So they're saying that only a woman able to feed a child is inappropriate. It's unethical and inappropriate. And I'm so glad that women are let off the hook. Finally.
I mean, it's not unethical or inappropriate, whatever those words mean. I mean, it's the opinion of some physicians that breast milk is superior to formula, and other people disagree, and it's a debate that has raged for quite some time. But what you seem to be saying is it is bad because it suggests that women have a different role in motherhood than men do, but they do because women are the only people biologically capable of bearing children. Is that now a controversial observation?
Well, the study is saying, though, that women are not the only ones who could feed the children. So that's what they're trying to say. It is natural for others to be able to feed the children. So the whole burden is not on the mother. So that's what they're trying to say with this study.
Okay, but that's okay. First of all, of course that's true.
Right.
Of course. But that's kind of a decision. What do you mean? I don't think women are stupid.
Oh, well, there are some women that actually, I interviewed a pediatrician that had a mother that had a child starving for 2 weeks. She was not able to lactate. She was not able to produce breast milk for 2 weeks. The baby had lost weight, and she refused to give that baby formula for fear that her baby was not going to get the perfect breast milk and would have to turn to formula. The baby ended up in the NICU.
That's a totally fair point, and that's a shame when people feel like there's no alternative. Perhaps there are some, but that's not what's really going on here. This is gender politics intruding on the personal decisions that parents make.
Well,
it's also blurring the lines. It's suggesting, by the way, that men can breastfeed, which I don't think they can.
It's suggesting that men could, I don't know, but it's suggesting
that. Well, I do know. The answer is they can't.
So.
I have 4 children, I can tell you.
I don't know your secrets, but no, what they're saying is that men can feed children. They're finally putting a study out there that's saying that breast milk is not the only way to go. There are other ways.
Okay,
but
Cathy, you're dodging what I'm saying. Look, strictly speaking, I don't disagree with you.
Thank you.
But the debate is whether breast milk is better or worse than formula. And again, that is a scientific debate that nutritionists and physicians can have.
Right.
This is feminist groups saying, how dare you suggest that it's better for women to feed babies because that somehow ties them biologically to the act of procreation. And my only point is, feminists, as usual, are helping to obscure biological realities because they don't like them. And that's an attack on science, and I'm against that.
It's a study that's just saying it's inappropriate to say that breast milk is the only natural way to feed a child. A man could naturally feed a child in other ways.
Well, actually, a man can't naturally feed a child. A man can't produce formula.
I mean, naturally give it formula. Natural. It's natural. Loving is natural.
Okay. It's just. Can you just take 3 steps back?
No.
And acknowledge that there's something pretty awful about inserting gender politics into something as beautiful and intimate as the first days of a child's life.
You know,
and maybe parents could say, hey, back off.
It's not beautiful. Breastfeeding is not beautiful. Breastfeeding, it causes so many headaches, and it can be so horrible. And as a pediatrician told me, it doesn't come naturally for so many women. So this study, I think, is wonderful because women can finally step back and say, wow, it's okay to hand the bottle and the baby over to dad or my girlfriend or whatever the case may be.
Half of that sentence is correct, of course. It is absolutely okay to do that.
Thanks.
But I'm just wondering, final question for you, because this is giving me a little bit of a headache.
I'm sorry.
No offense to you. No, it's not your fault, but just the whole subject is so crazy. If it's not natural to breastfeed, how did the species get to where it is now? Like, why didn't we die out several millennia ago?
I think we found other ways, like formula, to feed the babies. So, and years
so
ago,
like during the medieval period, like where did you get the Similac then?
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm not quite sure, but this breastfeeding phenomenon has been going on for the last 10 years. But before that, our mothers weren't all exactly into breastfeeding. You had the feminism, the revolution, the 70s. Women did not breastfeed like they do nowadays. So breastfeeding has not always been the answer.
Man, I'm glad my kids are older and I don't have to weigh into this stuff. Kathy, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Well, a Muslim group in Australia has been campaigning for special Muslim safe spaces where young Muslims could voice extremist views without fear of being monitored. That sounds like a great idea. American Muslim Blair Amani thought taxpayer-funded safe spaces were, in fact, a great idea. They ought to be here in the United States, and she came on here to explain why. Watch this. So, Blair, what exactly would a safe space for Muslims look like? What does that mean exactly?
Well, first, I think we need to start by understanding that everybody kind of misunderstands what a safe space means. And so for me today, I'm talking about safe spaces being somewhere where you can be who you are without fear of being surveilled, having violence committed against you, or being harassed. And I think it's a good idea to have everywhere. America was built on the idea that we could express our religious freedoms, that we can have free speech. I know that's something that you very much believe in.
Yes.
And I think it's, you know, a necessary thing. And we're talking about safe spaces for Muslims. We need to recognize that we've been surveilled for a very long time. I converted to Islam 2 years ago, but for folks who have been Muslim and living in America, it's a crisis for them because, you know, you're being surveilled, you're being watched, and children are being affected.
We may have to stop you there. Why do you think law enforcement agencies would put Muslims under surveillance?
Well, obviously because of the, you know, the counterterrorism efforts. But when
no, but what is? I'm sorry. What is that? Why would there be counterterrorism efforts aimed at Muslims?
Come on, Tucker, you're a smart guy. You know why that is.
I don't know. I'm a man who asks questions, and I'm asking a question about the statement you just made. What's the answer?
Absolutely. Well, there are, you know, acts of terror committed in the name of Allah that do not, you know, reflect the Muslim community. However, there is this.
Well, they may or they may not, but you'll concede this is not entirely random. It's not that the U.S. government or police departments are just like looking for some religious group to persecute, or is that what you're saying?
I am saying that, you know, the United States government has been in the business of doing that for quite a long time.
So why don't they do it to the Amish? Wait, hold on, listen. Why don't they do it to the Amish, or why don't they do it to Hasidic Jews? I mean, they're a set-apart community, speak a different language, not assimilated, but I don't see a lot of terror attacks committed by those groups. Have you?
It's not profitable right now to be, you know, speaking against these other groups. Right now, it's very profitable to be speaking against Muslims because it's, you know, feeding into this wartime efforts. More cells.
Okay, but look, I mean, we can debate the details here, but I think it's important to acknowledge a baseline, and that is that there have been an awful lot of attacks where actual people died in the United States and in Europe, committed by people saying really clearly we're acting in the name of Islam. And other Muslims say, you don't act in my name and you're perverting our religion or whatever. But there's still people who have killed a lot of other people in the name of Islam. So it's not like some mass fantasy that law enforcement is acting out of. This is a real thing, and I don't understand why groups like yours won't acknowledge the reality of that, because it is there. It's true.
And we also have this rise of white supremacist and, you know, quote, alt-right, you know, violence that's being committed.
Oh, spare me. That's too dumb.
I mean,
I'm so, no, you know,
we
but
can't
actually,
ignore
it's
that
not.
it's happening, Tucker.
Look, if you're reading only Salon all day, maybe you've been convinced of that. But the truth is, there are hard numbers kept by the U.S. government. Maybe they're in on this plot too, that show exactly the number of people who died and how in terror attacks in the United States. And the truth is there's no comparison. There actually is a problem with people self-identifying as Muslims murdering other people in the name of Islam. I don't think you're implicated in that. I'm not saying you are. But I just don't know why you're not more upset at them. I'm an Episcopalian. If they're Episcopalians setting off bombs in the name of...
Tucker.
Okay, but what you're doing is coming on and lecturing the U.S. government for being racist and mean to Muslims. Why don't you say, well, there's a real problem in our community. We're trying to do something about it, but maybe they should stop like surveilling us so much. That would be a fair thing to say, but instead it's like it's always the fault of the larger society, and that just, you know what, that's just silly. Have you noticed that all identity politics kind of converges in the end? So it's not just about Muslims, it's about the LGBT community, it's about black lives. It's like, you know, at some point...
Well, some of us, like myself, exist in all of those communities. It's not identity politics when it's your life.
But do you also, it's, you know, okay. But don't you also think that primarily you're an American? Aren't we all first and foremost Americans?
I'm black first. End
of conversation. Thanks, Blair. Well, Memorial Day is supposed to bring Americans together, and mostly it does. But this year, a New York Black Lives Matter group thought differently. They hosted a party for the holiday and asked people who weren't black not to come. We were ready to have a serious discussion about this because it's a serious matter. But Professor Lisa Durden of Essex County College had her own plans. You can judge for yourself what you thought of her argument. We will say that the college she worked for fired her over this segment. Judge for yourself. I was confused by this because I thought the whole point of Black Lives Matter, one of the points would be to speak out against singling people out on the basis of their race and punishing them for that. Because you can't control what your race is, and yet they seem to be doing that. Explain that to me.
What I say to that is boo, hoo, hoo. You white people are angry because you couldn't use your white privilege card to get invited to the Black Lives Matters All Black Memorial Day celebration. Wow. Let me contextualize that for you. Memorial Day was created
I don't want
by...
you to, wait, First of all, I don't want you to contextualize.
Oh, I need to contextualize it because Memorial Day was created by black former slaves in 1865 to honor those individuals who were Union soldiers who fought and died for our freedom. So Black Lives Matter, in that same vein, decided to get together with black folks.
I'm not going to let you filibuster past my question.
To make sure that black folks were celebrated for being murdered by racist terrorists.
I don't want to shut this down, but I will. Okay. I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that. I just have a really simple question for you. If you don't like people excluding others on the basis of their race, and as a society we agree that that's bad. I agree it's bad, you agree it's bad. Then why are you doing it? And why are you defending it now?
White folks crack me up all of a sudden when we want to have one day for black folks to focus on ourselves. But you've been having white days forever. You don't say the words anymore because you know it's politically incorrect. But you've had an all-white Oscars, all these movies with all-white actors, movie after movie after movie, all-white TV shows with white casts over and over and over again. The Bachelorette, it took 11 seasons to a black bachelorette. Are you serious?
It's hard to believe. I hope you're not speaking for anyone else. I hope there aren't a lot of people in this country who agree with you.
Well, my name is Lisa Durden. I'm speaking for Lisa Durden.
I just hope there aren't people watching who agree with you, because what you're saying is so hostile and separatist and crazy. It's such a basic violation of what I thought we all agreed on, which is you don't attack people for things they can't control, namely their race.
It's not an attack. I'm stating the facts. People give weddings where they exclude children. It doesn't mean they don't like children. They don't know if your kids are going to be monsters and those kids are going to be well behaved. So in that same vein, Black Lives Matter decided to have one day where they didn't want white folks who were going to be off the rails. They don't know if you're going to be the ones behaved and for them or the ones who are there against them. So they picked one day to do the celebration.
Let me just ask you a quick question.
Go right ahead.
Do you think it's racist to exclude people on the basis of their skin color?
I think it's racist when you've been excluding people for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Why don't you answer my question and
stop with your silly lectures? I'm asking you a very simple question.
We're forced to come together collectively to celebrate ourselves because you guys won't. You are the larger society. Let's be real here.
You guys, I'm talking about what I thought we all believed. Let me ask you this. Do you think it would be fair if white people did come to a Black Lives Matter celebration?
They do all the time. When you look at Black Lives Matter,
do you use the same water fountain that they do?
And you see Black Lives Matter coming together collectively for different issues. You see people of all races. So we do accept them. This particular day, they said, stay your asses out. We want to celebrate today. We don't want anybody going against us today.
And you can't celebrate if someone who doesn't look like you is around?
Yes, you can, but you can also
demented,
say, I don't want to do it. It's a personal choice.
You're sick, and what you're saying is disgusting. And if you were a Nazi, I would say the same thing to you.
Luckily, I'm not a Nazi.
Because what you're saying is indistinguishable from what they are saying, which is, I don't care your opinions, I don't care your views, your life experience, your intentions. All I care about is the way you look, something that you can't control. And on that basis alone, I'm judging you, and I'm hostile to you. That's the case you're making, and it's divisive and wrong. And it's amazing that you didn't have to say that out loud, but I can't believe you're making the case you're making.
Unfortunately, when you have a racist society like America, you force individuals to come together collectively to make sure that they have a voice.
And that's
this
unfortunate that the racism has caused people to come together collectively. We have gay pride parades. We have Puerto Rican Day parades. We have all kinds of parades and days that honor individuals. We have Mother's Day. We have Father's Day.
Fathers
so
are
on
allowed
Mother's
to
Day,
participate
just take
in
your
that.
mama out,
I'm
not
not
your
sure you're
daddy
even
out.
capable of having this conversation, so I'm going to end it now. Let me just ask you one last. Let me ask you one last question, and be totally honest with this. Do the people in your world, your parents, your siblings, your kids, your friends, do they agree with you on this?
My family respects my right to free speech.
No, don't give me that dumb answer. I mean, do they agree with what you just said, though? Do you know a lot of people who agree with what you just said?
Speech.
Whatever. No one's contesting it.
I'll see you next time on your show. You'll be inviting me on again.
Do you know a lot of people who agree with you?
Tucker, I'm going to see you again in less than a month. Ratings are going up.
I don't even know what you're talking about, and I'm not sure I look forward to it. But thanks for coming on tonight, Lisa. Well, we've saved the best for last. Coming up next, we'll visit maybe our most memorable guest of all, Dom Calypso, the mysterious figure leading the fake protest group Demand Protest. 25 years of journalism, never seen anything like it. Obviously couldn't end a highlight show without revisiting maybe the greatest guest ever to appear on television. We're speaking, of course, of the legendary Dom Calypso. Dom, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, no problem, Tucker.
So this is a sham. Your company isn't real. Your website is fake. The claims you have made are lies. This is a hoax. Let me start at the beginning, however, with your name, Dom Calypso, which is not your real name. It's a fake name. Well, we ran you through law enforcement level background checks, and that name does not exist. So let's start out with the truth. Tell me what your real name is.
It's Dominic Tuyipso. It's per L's are silent.
That's a lie, and you know it's a lie.
Tucker, you're not accusing me of being a hoax, are you?
I'm saying that your name is fake and this company is fake and that the claims you've made on your website are false. On your website, you claim that you pay a retainer to 1,817 operatives every month. Now, if that were actually true, that's $54 million a year you're spending just on retainers. It's another $30 million a year if you're paying them for 6 hours a week work. That's demonstrably silly. You're not doing that. What is the real story here? Why are you doing this? What point are you trying to make?
Yeah. The main point basically is that we are greatly supportive of national treasures such as Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, Peyton Manning, and we really support their efforts to really get the truth out there. And in the case of the current client that we have right now, that client is very interested in releasing the Roswell papers. I don't know it.
Really? So you're pretty supportive of Peyton Manning, are you?
Extremely, yeah.
Okay. You're not going to, I mean, obviously, this is performance art. I will say you're pretty good at it. When you convince papers like the Washington Times, which ran this pretty straight, to run your lies, to run this hoax, which I will concede is kind of amusing, what was the point of that? I mean, beyond just amusing yourself. Are you trying to make a political statement?
I don't know. I mean, it's pretty darn easy these days to just say whatever the heck you want on national TV and have it pass off as truth. And, you know, it's pretty, I don't know, it's just pretty incredible to me how easy it was to get the coverage we got. By the way, I'm not saying any of this is a hoax or any of this isn't true. We've actually got 100,000 protesters going to Washington, D.C. to fight anybody who is opposed to Donald Trump. I mean, the reason we another main reason we shifted from being against Trump to Trump about 30 minutes ago was basically we realized initially he didn't really like Julian Assange or Peyton Manning, and when he kind of changed, when the election and the Assange connection was made, he essentially became a supporter of Assange, and so we are now supporting Trump in the hope that the Roswell documents from 1947 are finally released and put back into the hands of Fisher Stevens.
The single strangest interview I've ever done in 25 years. We'll post the